Can we build a commander deck with this Bloomburrow commander with only land? That was the thought I had to myself for this brew video when I saw Hug's Grisly Guardian, who at the time was the newest legend spoiled from the set. And the honest answer, no, I couldn't. I mean, you can, but I just wasn't satisfied with how the deck turned out. That being said, the journey we went on to make this deck into something that I could really enjoy was definitely worth it, even if the initial challenge was a little too much. If you're new to the Bloomburrow Brew challenges on the channel, I'm trying to build an EDH deck for every single legal commander from the set, with a couple of other restrictions. While I'm disappointed that I wasn't able to finish the challenge version of the build in a way that felt satisfying, how we got to where we did and where we ended up actually points to this powerful badge of being a great addition to your commander tables. As a note, this deck was brewed when there were only 5 legends spoiled, so some of the newer cards and the temporal positioning of this video is going to be a little out of whack. It's time to get brewing. Enjoy the ride. So we're here with the first new legend spoiled in Bloomburrow for a very long time. We had the first 4 legends that were spoiled, and this is the latest one, Hug's Grisly Guardian. So when I saw this card, I was like, you know what? This card kind of just does it all. Do we really need to do much? It's a card draw source, basically, or card advantage source, because it exiles cards, you can play them, and it ramps you because you can play additional lands. Now granted, you have to get there first and pay at least 4 mana just for the exploration effect, but that's pretty powerful. So my thought was, not only are we going to do a regular brew challenge where we just try and brew a deck, but can I brew a deck that only uses land? That's my plan for today. Still trying to brew quickly, haven't got under an hour. Might be the one to do it because we're just adding a lot of lands to this deck, but I'm going to try and make it as close to the commander decks I've built as possible. 3, 2, 1, go. Thankfully the Scryfall searches are easy for this one, but we'll start by adding a forest and we'll add a mountain as well because we are going to need these at some point. And then today it's type land. That's all we need in Scryfall. There are 470 results returned for land in these colors. I will say I didn't think about this before, but I think I will count MDFCs, but let me double check a ruling real quick. All right, so I looked up a rule real quick and I'm pretty sure Hugs can play the land side of MDFCs. So that being said, I will count MDFCs that have a land as their back face as lands for the purpose of this deck. That might be controversial to some, but it's basically 99 lands, and that might give us an opportunity to get like 1 or 2 extra spells in there that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But overall, I don't think it's going to be all that important, to be perfectly honest. All right, let's add some lands. So Ancient Tomb is kind of interesting. I actually think this is a rare instance where I probably don't want this kind of effect, even though it is a lands deck. The colorless mana really only helps us with the X cost, and we kind of need to play the 4 colored mana as consistently as possible, and we're going to have a lot of colorless lands because we need all our utility lands to fill in the normal slots of our framework. So I'll earmark them, maybe we'll end up playing them, but I actually don't think Ancient Tomb and Friends are going to be a big draw for this deck, which is surprising because that's one of the few ways to like ramp. Oh, interesting. I didn't realize Arena of Glory gave you an extra mana. Wait, I didn't realize that at all. I thought you just exerted it to give something haste. It gives you an extra mana. Why does it give you an extra mana? All right, well, that's amazing. Arch of Araska, it is a card draw spell. I don't know how many lands draw cards. I think we'll be able to find some, but I don't think there'll be that many good sources of card draw for lands. Thankfully, our commander is going to fill in a lot of the space, but this is probably like a decent card draw spell we'll end up wanting to play. The bounce lands, I think we might want a bounce land or 2, but I'm not going to commit to Arid Archway just yet. Valakut Recovery. I mean, this is pretty important. This is definitely a spell, but like I said, MDFCs do count as lands. We can play them as lands off the top of our deck, so for the purposes of this, I am counting them. Barbarian Ring, recent reprint, nice and cheap now, is a removal spell, kind of. It's a little tricky to get going sometimes, but it mostly counts. Blast Zone, this is basically one of the best sweepers, maybe the only sweeper you can play. Blighted Woodland is a ramp spell. It's a little expensive, but I think it's probably worth it. Boseiju is probably the best removal spell in green, or at least the best disenchant effect in green, and it's a land we're allowed to play. Unfortunately, it won't be very easy for us to recur it, but I think that's fine. We're just happy to have a good spell in our all lands deck. Abundance Enclave does get triggered automatically by our commander, so I think we can play it as a draw source. Bridgeworks Battle is kind of like a removal spell. I think we might want this. Cavern of Souls seems pretty good. It's obviously quite expensive, so leave it out if you're wanting to play a more budget version of this deck. But again, we need our lands to do quite a lot in this deck, and making our commander uncountable is pretty important given that we have to pay a lot of mana for it, and it has to resolve and enter the battlefield after we paid X. You can't flicker it and pay X, you have to pay X when you cast it. Our commander being cast and resolving is pretty important to our game plan, so I think Cavern of Souls feels like a justifiable choice here, even though it is quite expensive. Cinderglade is definitely a yes. The gates are okay. Our commander does have trample, but I don't think we need gates, really. Commercial districts, definitely. Command tower, yes. Cryptic caves? It draws a card. It's okay. This could be a Dark Depths deck, but I don't think we really care about that. Drownyard Temple, I mean, seems fine. I don't know how often we're going to be milling or discarding cards, but this card's pretty good. I don't think Dwarven Mine's fine. It's like a special mountain. Echoing Deeps is fine. It's like a worse Vesuva, but still pretty good. Violet Thicket, definitely. We do need colors pretty badly. Field of the Dead, I think, is the obvious way to play with this commander. I'm going to purposely exclude Field of the Dead, as I think I did with Lumra. This card is really good, but you can play it if you want, and you really want to boost the power of this deck. I just don't think this deck needs it. I think this card is just a little too good for most games of Commander, unfortunately. Also not good enough for the highest power games of Commander. So Field of the Dead's in that weird, like, ick zone. I think games are more enjoyable when it's not in the game. So I'm going to keep it out of this deck. Game Trail is fine. We'll go with Gemstone Caverns here. This is definitely trending on the more expensive side of a build, and there's definitely ways to make this cheaper if you want to build this deck, but don't want to splash for all the more expensive lands, because some lands do get really expensive. But again, if we're trying to maximize our deck as best we can using lands, Gemstone Caverns probably worth it. The few times we ever draw it, and we're not going first. And otherwise, it's just a land, which is fine. Glimmer Post. Gaining life is nice. I don't know how many other locusts we'll play. Cabin seems fine. Doesn't get you a lot, but it's just like a fancy forest, and it's good enough, to be honest. I do want Demolition Field, which we already went past. I feel like we're skipping quite a few lands, given how many lands we need to put in this deck. Grove? Yeah, sure. Why not? It's fine. I think probably Gruul Turf. I think if we're going to play a bounce land, probably the on-color one is the one that makes the most sense. We might play more than one, but maybe just only one. Helios One's one of the cards I talked about that is a more recent printing that I feel like makes decks like this better. This is a removal spell that's pretty cheap and pretty easy to include in decks, and even though it's kind of slow, if we're trying to make an all-lands deck work, playing a pretty good removal spell that goes into our mana base seems like something we should be doing. Oh, actually, the depletion lands are good here. If we play tap land turn 2, tap land turn 3, we can play our commander on turn 3. With X, actually. Just play a third land. Definitely a lot slower than Ancient Tomb, but much cheaper if you're looking for a budget alternative, and the fact that they make colored mana is really valuable here. Play this. I think we're going to play most of the mountains. I have a feeling we're going to be playing Valakut. It's a removal spell, kind of. So I think we are going to maximize the mountains we have in our deck. Oh, I forgot. They did print a pain land for everyone that cantrips. Horizon of Progress. I totally forgot about this card. Also, the second ability is really good. This card's actually nuts. Junktown? Yeah, it's basically a draw spell. Kessig Wolf Run? Wolf Run seems okay. Kind of down for Wolf Run. I think Mariposa Military Base is good. We don't love milling ourselves that much because we don't currently have a way to play lands from our graveyard. Maze of Ith, probably a Maze of Ith deck. It's more a spell than a land, but playing 99 lands, so probably worth it. Crossfire Valley, yes. Myriad Landscape, actually decent. Ominous Cemetery, expensive, but a land that can remove a creature basically, so seems pretty good. Definitely getting towards the end, which is concerning me, if I'm being honest. Didn't think we'd get this far and not have that many lands in our deck, I feel like. Pinnacle Monk can get Balagad Recovery back. Kinda janky, but maybe kinda good. Vista seems fine. Ramanap Ruins is also interesting. I think Raging Ravine might be worth it. Sanctum of Eternity is good. This is like one of the few ways we can actually recast our commander and do some good stuff. Shatter Skull Smashing. I mean, it is a land. I can play it as a land. All right, there are 120 more lands to look at from this point, so we still have time, but I'm getting a little bit concerned. All right, so Florahedron's going in, and Florahedron definitely begs the question of, are we trying to skirt the restriction a little too much? I mean, it is all land still, technically kind of, but I recognize that Florahedron feels a little like not in the spirit of the deck, but again, I think given that our options are so limited, I'm okay with it. But I recognize that I'm taking a couple liberties here with MDFCs when I'm saying I'm building a deck with all lands. So it was around this point that the truth of this extra brew challenge was starting to settle in. While I could just throw a bunch of basics in and claim that I technically built a deck with 99 lands, that version of the deck was just not interesting to me. I know this deck is only 2 colors, but I was shocked that there weren't enough cards between the MDFCs and the Lands of Magic's history to build a Gruul all lands deck the way I wanted to. So instead of just doing the challenge for the sake of it, I decided to make some changes. Yeah, this deck has some big problems. If we could fill the last 12 slots with real cards, I think this deck would be sick. As it stands, we're not doing that because that wasn't the point. All right, so I've sat here and thought about it for a bit, and as much as I like the idea of the all lands Hugs deck, adding a bunch of extra lands that don't really do anything to this current pile of cards is just not a satisfying commander deck. I think it's worth building something that's very land heavy, but is more of a like tuned up commander deck that tries to actually embrace wanting to be the red-green lands deck. So in the spirit of being the red-green's lands deck, I think I'm going to try and build this like an old school version of modern Valakut, red-green Valakut. Basically, I'm going to retune this. I'm going to keep the land count high and like really high, but let's start adding some cards into our framework and see where we get, basically. Because right now, this is kind of a mess. All right, so first things first, we need at least one more sweeper, probably two, probably three total. The removal's actually looking pretty good for the most part. Actually, the removal has been surprisingly the most robust thing for this gimmick. The ramp needs a little bit of work. Thankfully, we will be able to play Soul Ring now. Draw's definitely going to need the most work, it looks like. And then the other thing is that I'm going to audit how many tap lands are in the deck because we currently have too many. But let me start building things out first, and then we can do that. We're back to being a real commander deck. It's time to add Soul Ring. Couldn't escape it. Could not escape Soul Ring. I wanted Sakura Tribal, let's put that in. Obviously stuff like Exploration is pretty good in this deck. I think Exploration isn't always a ramp spell, but in this deck, it's definitely going to be one. The only other thing I'm thinking is that this deck probably wants Dryad of the Elysian Grove, but maybe not necessarily a ramp spell. So ramp, I'm pretty much happy with. Removal, I'm going to quickly audit now. Barbarian Ring I like. Beseiju is incredible. Helios 1, I actually really like. Cemetery is okay. Kind of expensive, but I don't mind it, honestly, especially since it can be used at instant speed. Talon Gates is incredible. Underdark Rift is probably the worst of these. Valakut, I think, definitely counts. Shatterskull Smashing is good and does count as a removal spell. So does Stomp, in my opinion. And Bridgeworks Battle is kind of on the borderline as well. I'd probably take out Hazard and Bridgeworks, and I think I don't want Underdark Rift anymore. I do want a Braid. That's kind of the obvious one, so let's play a Braid. I'm not good at dealing with random permanents. I don't have a... Oh, I do have a Disenchant. I have Beseiju. God, this card is so ridiculous. Bridgeworks Battle is an untapped land. Might just be worth it. Spikefield Hazard, I think, can come out, and we can leave everything else in. Oh, Underdark Rift. I forgot about Underdark Rift. No Underdark Rift. I don't need another Disenchant effect. I kind of need, like, a way to exile problematic permanents, which is not that easy. Like, how do I kill a god? How do I kill Perforos in this deck? Chaos Warp, I guess? Or Wild Magic Surge? I think Wild Magic Surge makes sense. But we can play a generic spell here, like a Lightning Bolt would be fine, and kind of in theme with the modern Valakut deck that inspired this. Do I want always to get energy? I could play like Smite the Deathless to remove Indestructible. I could play Beast Within, just as a generically good answer. Oh, isn't there a card that deals more damage if you cast it from exile? Because that's Delayed Magic Fireball or whatever. That might be good in this deck as a sweeper. I think I'm going to play that and like Blasphemous Act as my two other sweepers. Yeah, a lot of these are not what I'm looking for. There's like, let me look at the energy cards real quick. I'm just thinking for Helios 1, we might want a little bit of support, but not too much. Oh, I just realized Aether Revolt. Wait, this triggers a Valakut. As long as the permanent you controlled left the battlefield, that's pretty easy. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or permanent and opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. So I was legitimately thinking about like Furnace of Wrath. I actually think this is kind of good. Like if you bounce and replay a desert with this and play, it becomes a Valakut. I'm in for this. I'm starting to see the vision. I didn't even remember this card. That's so fun. I mainly thought of stuff like Torbrand. And I was like, well, I have to play Painter Servant then to make my lands red. But this is way better than that. And doesn't need me to jump through ridiculous hoop. I was mainly thinking about like Galvanic Discharge, maybe? Not Reiterating Bolt. I think Galvanic Discharge. Oh, hang on. Look at this. We don't make enough energy for this to be a reliable draw spell, but this is good. This is just generically good in our deck. Dealing a bunch of damage. That's a really sweet card. Can we get enough energy support actually to make this good? Definitely a less reliable draw spell, but you can play lands off of it. Not that many good ways to make energy. I am going to play Galvanic Discharge. Yeah, we're going to have a very, very small energy theme in here. I think if we want to play Unstable Amulet, we need to play Architect of the Untamed, assuming we want to use Amulet as a semi-reliable draw source. And we're going to add some sweepers. We are going to need to audit the tap lands. We are going to need more draw. Hugs will draw us a decent amount of cards over the course of the game. Like, make no mistake, this is draw X cards. Worded a little bit differently, but this is basically draw X cards. Maybe all of these are okay. Maybe I want one less of these lands. Arch, Enclave, War Room, and Military Base are kind of all the same card. 3 is probably fine. 2 is probably ideal, but not sure we'll have the luxury of 2 because we might not have room. I'm trying to think what else I can do for draw in this deck. I guess the other thing I should say, because when you think of land and think of draw, you think of Life in the Loam. The other challenge to myself is I don't think I want to play Life in the Loam in this deck. I want to see if there's a way to make this deck work without Life in the Loam. You know, for fun, to kind of preserve some element of the challenge, given that we couldn't build a deck with all lands. I need a way to pick up lands. I think there is a way to do that. I know there's an elemental that does it. I'm thinking of a really... Living Twister. This is the card I was thinking of. Oh, Mina and Den's also good. I did say I wanted to play... What was that card? Impulsive Draw Spell. There's lots of them. I'm thinking of one in particular. I said it when I was just looking for cards. No! Oh, seriously, I just said it. All right, it will come back to me. I want to see if I can find a replacement for Life in the Loam. I know I said I wouldn't play Loam, and I'm going to stick to that, but I do need something that can put lands back. Cartographer's not bad. This does the thing. A Petrified Field. I forgot about this card. This would actually do it. I'm down for Petrified Field. Fun little card. Used to be a part of Gifts Ungiven packages back in the day. Oh, I remember what card it was. I saw an adventure card, and it triggered... Questing Druid was the card I was thinking of. Oh, we should play that Crime Land Finder card. This deck could play Heartwood Storyteller. Yeah, we're going to play mostly lands. Okay, we should play Horn of Greed. Horn of Greed's really sweet. This is definitely a Horn of Greed deck. This has Turbo Land energy for sure. There's a lot of bad cards we can play. I'm never averse to playing bad cards, as you all know. Oh, On the Trail. We should play On the Trail for sure. What a fun enchantment. Again, another great card I forgot about. I mean, there's always Harmonize, but... kind of over harmonized, if I'm being honest with you all. I like Storyteller a lot. I think this is a sweet one. Horn of Greed is an absolute banger. Maybe just another Questing Druid-esque effect. I think the discard draw cards like Thriller Possibility et al. Are actually good enough here. Sure, you know what? That seems fun. Let's play Thriller Possibility. I think I am only going to play 10 draw spells because this deck's going to have so many lands in it. Oh, wow. This seems good. It's an impulsive draw spell with Retrace. So discard a land, you may recast it from your graveyard. Also Escape to the Wilds. I actually like this card a lot. All right, I think we've found the rest of the draw we need. It means I'm going to end up cutting another draw land, but I think that's okay. Do I want to play 10 draw spells or do I want to play a 12th one? I think I just want to play 10. I'm sticking to my guns if Hugs is a good enough card advantage engine. Enclave will keep, War Room will keep. Oh, I actually like Military Base a lot. Enclave versus War Room. How many other 4 power creatures do I even have? Not very many, I'm guessing. Yeah, we're going to cut Enclave. So I'm pretty happy. We have some work to do still, but 10 draw, 10 ramp. I think only 10 draw in this deck. I think we have, again, enough card advantage in the command zone that I'm okay skipping a little bit of draw. Removal's looking nice. Like our sweepers, I think we do need 3. This deck's going to be pretty defensive. And I think we've established a lot of what we want to do. We have a mini energy system. We want to make some extra land plays. We're going to pick up our lands and recast them. And mostly we want to Valakut and Aether of all people out of the game by dealing damage with our lands, which is very funny to me. So how many lands do we have and how many lands do I need to potentially cut? So we have 83 lands, including MDFCs, but we're going to cut 6. I think 70 plus is a good land target for this deck. So let's try and stick with 70 plus lands. So first of all, how many tap lands do we have? Because we have too many and we need to cut some. Did a bunch of counting. We have 17 tap lands. I think Mammoth is going to get cut. Cazul's Fury we can cut. We don't need that. I can't cut any of the mountains. How often are we going to trigger Watchtower? I actually don't think we're ever going to trigger Watchtower. I'm going to move Watchtower out of the deck. It's not a tap land, but just kind of looking through the deck, I was like, wait, I think that doesn't make sense anymore. Raging Ravine, I don't think we need. We can cut that. Maybe we don't need a tune with Aether. We do need to cut cards generally. All right, it was 79 lands, so we still have room to cut lands if we want, if we're trying to stick with 70 plus, but our lands are doing a decent amount of work in this deck. I think the main thing I'm missing is like a Crucible effect. So let's play Ramanap. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about recursion that much. I think I'm just going to tweak the land base a bit. I think the one thing we do need, because we're kind of becoming this fun land pingy deck, I think we do want to play backwards, and I think we want to play Sun-Scorched Desert. And I think the goal is to get Valakut triggers and or try and replay our ping lands as many times as possible. Also, we need to commit crimes with Free Strider Lookout. This card is absurd. This card honestly might count as a draw spell. Yeah, I'm going to say that it does. Also, we need more ways to commit crimes. What things they target on them? Oh, this targets. That's so sick. You can commit crimes with Kessig Wolfrun. Okay, we have quite a few ways to trigger crimes. And let's check out draw spells real quick, because I think Free Strider Lookout's going to count as a draw spell for me. Do I want to cut anything knowing that? Maybe War Room? Kind of like Military Base a lot. We'll cut War Room. Why not? Still got to cut some cards, though. I could cut Cryptic Cave. I mean, Game Trail's not my favorite card, but I think it's worth it. Do we need Caverns? Caverns was kind of a card in the deck when I was trying to build the 99 lands versions. Maybe Caverns gets cut. Do I need Radiant Fountain? Yeah, I think the Shire is probably enough life gain that I'm okay cutting Radiant Fountain as well. Temple of the False God. I think I'm going to cut this too, actually. Oh, actually, is Military Base even good? I know I kept it instead of War Room, but I don't have any other way to get rad counters. I actually don't think Military Base is worth it. All right, I'm happy with that. I am going to put War Room back in the deck. I love Military Base, but I just realized I can't ever get it to cost less than 3 to activate, and this is already 3 to activate. So I need like one more cut here, it looks like. All right, I'll cut Caverns. Oh, one thing I did realize actually is that Thrill of Possibility can get cut. I can't believe I forgot about this. There's just a card that's very similar, but it's even better in land stacks. Magmatic Insight. This is just Thrill of Possibility as a sorcery, but for 1 mana. Yeah, I'm really happy. This deck seems really sweet. It's not what I wanted ultimately at the end of the day, but I think it's pretty close. I think if I'm trying to like relive the glory of the old Valakut red-green decks, I think this will play out quite similarly to a lot of those where you're playing a bit more for value and then eventually you can kind of like semi-combo kill people. Although we don't have Scape Shift, you get added if you wanted to really go full combo, but I honestly think the stuff this card does, this commander does, is pretty nuts. I'm really happy with where we landed. I'm going to cut it off here. Not a bad time, to be perfectly honest. Let's stop the clock. And that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, even though we didn't get the challenge done quite the way I wanted to. Let me know what Bloomburrow Legend you're excited for next, because there are so many out now. I do have a particular one in mind, but you can let me know which one's your favorite in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.